YouTube, what is up, and welcome back to the third and final part of using macronutrients to achieve your goals. Appreciate you all sticking with me as it took me a little while to get this third and final part out, but we are getting to the good stuff, the very useful and practical takeaways of the ebook that I originally wrote a couple years back, and this YouTube series where I've explained macronutrients, kind of how they function in the body, provided some examples of various macronutrients, and then transitioned into how I estimate caloric expenditure by using a couple of equations such as the Harris-Benedict and the Mifflin-St. Jeor equations. And then we talked about the other things that factor into caloric expenditure such as physical activity, non-exercise activity, thermogenesis, and the thermic effect of food. We covered how to account for all of those things so you understand how many calories you actually need to achieve your fitness goals. Now that was a very, very brief overview. So if you haven't watched parts 1 and 2 of these videos, I'm going to link those down below in the description before we get into this third and final part. But guys, before we get into the fun stuff, I'd really appreciate it if you helped me grow the channel by liking the video, subscribing to the channel, and ringing that notification bell if you're trying to do the most and support me in my journey to growing this channel and providing some stellar content to the people. I do training vlogs, I do educational information like this, learning series, fun things, a little bit of my wacky personality mixed in with everything. And also, of course, if you want to buy the actual ebook to support me, feel free to shoot me an email and we can get that taken care of as well. So part 3, the good stuff, what you really came for with this video series. So now that you have a good idea of how many calories you actually need to eat to achieve your goals, keep in mind my maintenance calories were 2,810. Where do you go from there? What actually is important to consider? So we have a couple of options. If you want fat loss, maintenance, or lean gaining, basically massing for those who want to add size. So let's cover a lot of people's goal, which is fat loss. I recommend starting out nice and slow and not getting too aggressive with your caloric deficit at somewhere around 500 calories less than your maintenance. Even though 500 doesn't seem like a lot, it actually is. So if you think about 2,300 calories versus 2,810, that is a pretty substantial difference, like almost between a fourth and a fifth of the total calories. So start your caloric deficit small. Of course, you can always maintain and just eat at that maintenance level. I think a lot of people that are newer to training that emphasize protein in their diet can actually do what's called body recomposition, which is essentially where you're eating at maintenance, but you have that protein-centric diet. You can add a slight amount of muscle and maybe burn a tiny bit of fat. Something to be said for maintenance. Big fan of maintenance. And then if you are trying to put on size, maybe you're different and you want to go against the grain and you're putting on size during summer, you're going to add 500 calories to that maintenance calorie value. And you might wonder why I'm so partial to 500 calories. That's because it's roughly estimated that 3,500 calories equals 1 pound. So if you're trying to lose a pound of fat a week, which is a great goal to have, you're going to take that deficit of 500 because 500 times 7 is 3,500. That's what's going to put you at that dropping a pound a week, or similarly gaining, I'd say a half of a pound to a pound a week is a great place to be. So you could do 250 to 500 calories above maintenance and you'll be on your way to gaining lean mass. So now that that's out of the way, how do we actually partition each macronutrient into your allotted calorie values? I have a couple of rough proxies for you to follow, and then we'll get into the nitty gritty, do some calculations, and show you some real life examples. Now protein, 1 gram of protein per pound of body weight. It's a very classic age-old recommendation. You could probably get away with doing a little less, and you could probably even benefit from doing a little bit more than 1 gram per pound. But I'm a big fan of this recommendation because it's going to cover your bases. It's going to be a very safe bet and a great place for you to start. So 1 gram per pound of body weight, in my case, would be around 200 grams of protein. Now for fats, because they are so important, it can be tempting to take away a lot of fats and operate at like super low fat levels, but your body is not going to appreciate that, and probably you're going to see some decreases in your sex hormone production, decreases in libido, and overall just feeling not so great when you go below 25 to 30% of your total calories being partitioned towards fat. And then carbohydrates will fill in the remainder of the calories available after you've factored in protein and fat. So let's get into my specific calculations. And once again, this screenshot was taken from 2021 when I made this video originally. So I literally wrote all of this out with a Sharpie on a piece of paper. How OG was that? Like, gosh, what a simple time it was for me. So back in 2021, and even now because I weigh 207 pounds, I'm pretty close, is 205 grams of protein. 25% of the total calories, so we're going to multiply 2,810 times 0.25, which equals 702.5 calories. And then keep in mind that a gram of fat has 9 calories. That's why I'm dividing 702.5 by 9. And that equals approximately 78 grams of fat. Now, I want you guys to be doing these calculations along with me. If you're going to watch this video series, you might as well have these take-home practical examples for yourself. And like I mentioned earlier, your carbohydrates are going to fill in the remainder of your total calories. So we add our protein, which is 820, plus the 702.5 calories that come from fat, and that equals 1,522.5 calories from my protein and from my fat. So we're going to take that, subtract it from our maintenance, 2,810 minus 1,522.5, which gives me 1,287.5. I'm going to divide that by 4 because a gram of carbohydrates has 4 calories. 1,287.5 divided by 4 is approximately 322 grams of carbohydrates. Overall, not the worst macros to work with here. And I guess we could honestly cut the video there, but I'm willing to bet because you're watching this video series, you have a curious mind. You're a above average intelligence audience member. So let's get into why we're using each macronutrient the way we are. The total amount of recommended protein in the diet is very debatable. Actually, I remember being in college classes, seeing this recommendation that nutrition boards recommend to general population that you can get away with 0.8 grams of protein per kilogram of body weight. Now think about kilograms, right? My weight in kilograms wasn't even 100 kilograms. So if I multiplied 0.8 times my body weight in kilograms, I'd be getting around 72 grams of protein. And I just truly don't believe that that's enough to support muscle building. Maybe for the average person that's just trying to get by and not get swole, which, I mean, I can't relate. What would life be without getting jacked? Kidding. There's probably more to life. Not that I would know. But you could get away with a little protein, but I think there's a case to be said for that 1 gram per pound. Now, there's even some IFBB pros out there that go 1.5 grams per pound, and that hasn't been directly supported in research. They haven't seen that there's a greater response in muscle protein synthesis by consuming more protein. I think that those calories could be better allocated towards carbohydrates, but there's this age-old anecdote from IFBB pros that more protein can be beneficial. I don't support that, but there might be something to it. So to be determined in later populations. Keep in mind, a lot of those guys are juiced out of their mind. So something to keep in mind, but I would recommend that 1 gram per pound of protein. So the timing and dosing of your protein is equally as important because you want to keep an ample supply of amino acids readily available for muscle protein synthesis throughout your day. So that's why I think it's important to have a serving of protein first thing when you wake up and then even before you go to bed, so that muscle protein synthesis can stay elevated and be working throughout the remainder of your day, basically helping you recover and build muscle. So if I were to spread out my protein, which was once again 205 grams throughout 5 meals across the day, I would go about 40 grams per meal. And there's nothing magical to saying, oh, I should have maybe 80 grams post-workout. I think a consistent amount of protein throughout each of your meals will keep those muscle protein synthesis levels high and give you a good supply of amino acids, which once again is the functional unit of protein for your body to utilize throughout the day. So keep it consistent, keep it standard, keep it simple. Super easy there. Remember, like I stressed earlier, fat is very important for regulating hormones and many other important processes in your body. So we had that 78 grams of allocated fat in my diet, And there's a couple of things that you're actually going to need to take into consideration when you're thinking about the timing and amount of fat or dosing of fat in each meal. So the main consideration is you need to limit your fat in that peri-workout window, or before and after and during your training. And that's because fat delays the absorption of other macronutrients, which can be used beneficially or it can be not so great. So let's think about your workout, right? The main macronutrient that's going to fuel your workouts, once again, you guessed it, is carbs. But if you have a ton of fat with your pre-workout carbs, the absorption of those carbohydrates is going to be delayed substantially. So you might not be able to utilize all of that glucose for your cellular energy to fuel yourself for a good workout if your pre-workout meal is heavy in fat. So that's why I gave you the practical recommendation. Once again, keep in mind, I have 78 grams of fat in this example diet for myself. I would say if I was working out in the mid to later half of the day, start your breakfast out higher in fat. Meal 2 can be somewhat high as well. And then that pre-workout meal and the post-workout meal is going to be around 10 grams of fat, keeping that nice and low, and then filling the remainder of the fat up, that 15 grams in meal 5 that you'll see there. Once again, just make sure you're keeping the bulk of your fat away from your peri-workout window. It's okay to have a little fat in there because you don't want to have no fat, right? I think there's something to be said for using fat in small amounts around your workout to kind of give you a sustained energy. But this framework of biasing your fat intake away from that peri-workout window will be the way to go there. In carbohydrates, keep in mind, I have around 320 grams of carbohydrates for this sample diet. On the exact opposite end of carbohydrates, I think it's actually really beneficial to have your carbohydrates in that peri-workout window. Now, in this example, I did use an equal amount of carbohydrates before and after your training session. That seems to work well for me, but I will say I've also had good success with a lower but still moderately high pre-workout window, and then a moderate to very high post-workout meal. So the way I might structure this now is actually maybe having 60 grams of my carbohydrates before that workout and then 120 on the tail end. And the reason why it's important to bias your carbs around that peri-workout window, one is for energy, but two is to create a protein sparing environment, right? So you've just taxed your body, gone through a very difficult and challenging workout. It's going to be demanding nutrients. And if you keep that post-workout meal high in carbohydrate, it creates what's called a protein sparing diet. So your body will be able to better use protein for muscle protein synthesis, whereas it might not be quite as great if you didn't do that. It's not going to be the end of the world. The timing on these macronutrients, it's the nitty gritty, like I said. But my guess, once again, if you're watching this video, you're trying to optimize your shit. So might as well do this to the best of our ability. Moderate carbs throughout the day, higher in that peri-workout window is the big takeaway here. But keep in mind, this part right here is the most important, and that's talking about consistency and adherence. The best diet is one that you can stick to. And here on the slide, I said it's simple but not easy, right? So a couple of things to follow to create good adherence is something like the 90-10 rule, right? If you can keep your foods 90% clean, you get slightly off track, maybe that other 10% isn't super clean, you're going to be fine. You are going to achieve your goals. So keep in mind, if you did 5 meals a day, 7 times a week, right? 7 days in the week, that's 35 total meals that you're eating throughout that week. So maybe you're off on around 3 of those meals. You shouldn't intentionally plan to be off, but if it happens, it happens. Or maybe you have a meal out to spend time with your family. If you're 90% on point, guys, keep in mind balance is very important, and sustainability over time will get you much better results than just being super on point for 3 months and falling off for the other 9 months of the year. If you do get on track, act like nothing happened. Don't try to compensate by doing a ton of cardio or starving yourself the next day. That often leads to vicious cycles that can even develop into even more serious disorders, mental disorders, weird feelings around food. I think a lot of us in the industry have been there, and it's not something you want to get caught up in. So if you do get off track, forget about it. Do your best to not mess up again and get right back on track with that diet. Biggest piece of advice that I could give you was right there. Guys, that's the end of the series. And if you have any ideas for other series, other contents you want me to cover in depth like this, drop them in the comments below. If you learned something or if you have any questions, drop that in the comment section below. It helps the algorithm. Let's get connected, Already plugged the channel. Like, subscribe, ring the notification bell. Do those things for me. But I also have a podcast. It's called The Trainer Scoop. It's here on YouTube. It's on Spotify. It's on Apple Podcasts. And I'm pretty active on Instagram, so check out my Instagram at dmarttraining. And I am an online coach. I've used these exact methods to coach my clients to getting them to achieve their goals. So if you need any help structuring a plan for your training, for your nutrition, hit me up, shoot me an email at the email down below, and we can get something going for you. But once again, thank you guys so much, and I will catch you in the next video.